Welcome to the Tao of Pizza, where we feature top logistics leaders, entrepreneurs, and supply chain innovators and share their inspiring stories with a holistic twist.
Mark Hiddleson here, host of the Tao of Pizza podcast, where I talk with top industry innovators in the warehousing, logistics, and supply chain business with a holistic twist. Past episodes you might want to check out is Sean Phillips, bestselling author of Strength for Life, and also Michael Thomas with Grocery Outlet. We had a great conversation with Michael and Sean. I have Dr. Jeremy Weiss here of Rise 25, who's done thousands of interviews with successful entrepreneurs and CEOs, and we've flipped the script, and he's going to interview me.
Mark, I'm excited. Well, one, your conversation is always entertaining, but two, you have this philosophical side of you, and that I didn't realize you had in the beginning. And we're going to talk about archetypes and why they're important to you and your business, and knowing them and how it helps you and other people. Before we dig into that, this episode is brought to you by Specialized Storage Solutions. And listen, I know you've been in the logistics and storage industry for several decades now, and you provide some of the industry-leading warehouse storage solutions nationwide. So basically, if you have a warehouse that needs rack, shelving, carts, conveyors, mezzanine, you help with the design, engineering, installation, inspection, repairs, everything that needs to be done, even permits. So sometimes people don't even realize that. Now, you take an entire holistic approach to the business, kind of like what you do with life, really. So if you want your supply chain ecosystem looked at, Mark is your person. So go to specialtracks.com. You can give them a call, 707-732-3892 to learn more, and email him. He even said, Jeremy, I'm fine. I'll give out my personal email, markhiddleson@aol.com. if you're ready to take your warehouse storage and systems to the next level. So, Mark, why are archetypes important for someone and their business?
So in business, well, first, I think it's important. It's one area, self-awareness is something that is really going to make you, the more you know about yourself and patterns that you have, the more effective you're going to be. And archetypes are the first exposure I had to them was reading a book by Joseph Campbell, or Joe Campbell, Hero of 1,000 Journeys, and he goes into it. But Carl Jung, I study psychology, and I have a master's degree in holistic health education. So I really got into, how can you connect with, what Jung called the collective unconscious, or even your own. Because they say, 90% of your consciousness is you're not even aware of it. You're just doing things. And so sometimes you get on autopilot and it's fantastic. You're in the Zen zone and things are rocking. And then there's also patterns, all those archetypes, they're neutral, but they also have a pathological side. And you can go too far in any direction. For me, I created a project during my master's degree where I created a project through Carol and Missa's work on archetypes in the book Sacred Contracts. And it was just really helpful to, there's hundreds of archetypes, and going through and selecting the ones that I most identify with, just as a process, gave me access to ways I could be, I can sense a pattern coming up. And then, if it's pathological, I could choose not to go there. And the thing is, if you're not aware that those things are going on, it doesn't even give you the choice of doing it. And I'm not saying that I never do, because it's easy to get on a roll. And I think, and last time, and I wanted to bring this up, I wanted to thank you. Last time we had a conversation like this, you asked me before, you said, hey, how's everything going? And I said, man, honestly, I'm a little off today. And I like to do that. It's something I learned. If I would just share with somebody and not even really asking for help, just go, well, look at, something happened. It was somebody close to me. It was kind of a close call, and I'm off. And you said, hold on a second. Here's I want you to watch this 2-minute video. And I shared with you some of the details. I'm not going to share it publicly, but within, 30 seconds, I'm laughing, and what you sent me it was a surgical right to the heart of what I was talking about, and I was able to just laugh and kind of let it go. And the archetype we were talking about that day was the clown, and how the clown can be, it's a painkiller. It's laughter's the best medicine. And I was just thinking about it afterwards. I was so grateful that was a perfect example. And I think you're a great coach, and you just saw that. It was a 2 minute, just 2 minute intervention, and that was it was like refreshing the page, start over. So that's one of the best examples I can think of where you used an archetype, or you used laughter, and I'm kind of a clown, so like, that's going to work on on every time. So,
Well, it's a funny thing is when you say that, like I didn't realize I was doing that specifically. But now that like you were saying, if you know it, you can actually consciously do it and do it better, because you know that archetype, and maybe you sense someone else that's their personality, so they'll resonate with certain things better than others.
absolutely, absolutely. And so you see it in yourself, and then you can see it coming up in others, and actually it gives you more patience. I mean, one of the things that I've had to develop personally is I'm not very patient, and that's great for some things if you're really trying to push and drive and get things done. But I'll tell you, patience. I know you're a John Wooden guy, and he's got a pyramid, and the sides of the pyramid, it's faith on one side and patience on the other, and you can't get the results you want and right now. So seeing that in other, it gives me more patience with other people. Like, oh, this, they're kind of going down the road motors, and I could wait for them to come back.
Yeah, I have opposing personality quotes in my mind on a daily basis. We have, Tommy Boy, and then we have John Wooden. So very different, very different archetypes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The profane and the profound.
So we talked about the clown last time. So I want to dig into another one, which is kind of, you talk about the integral mission and vision of Don Juan.
Right. So I used the work that I did with the archetypes in my book, and it was sort of a scientific way that I did it, because I kept track of it, and I wanted to, the chapters are in order of a certain way because each chapter kind of includes the next chapter. And but with the archetypes, I wanted to include it because it's another lens. I mean, my whole book is about the lens we see the world, or a worldview. An archetype is just a great way that everybody has to sort of access that paradigm. I call them paradigms and principles of peak performance. And so I did it very scientifically. I wrote all the archetypes down on a piece of paper, and I put them in a hat, and I kind of drew them out. And the one that Don Juan, it's funny, I did it. It seems really random, but then when I look at it, the Don Juan is great for a vision, because Don Juan is the seducer. And I've had a lot of sales training, and I think it's part of every sales training that you're really trying to win people over. And I chose it because of the positive aspects, and I'll talk a little bit about the shadow later. But the Don Juan is really about being vulnerable enough to ask for a relationship, and be willing to put yourself out there, and charm and disarm, and really be, only deepest intimate relationships. And a lot of the times people think of Don Juan just in the kind of the sexual sense of winning people's hearts. But I think it's a lot in business. If you want new clients, then you've got to make yourself attractive to the other. And I love looking at the mission and vision through the lens of Don Juan, because it's kind of going after going after what you want in life. Life is simple, right? You just have to figure out what you want, and then ask for it. And so I think the Don Juan is a great way to look at it.
So do you think of that when you're going into kind of a sales conversation or something like that? How do you incorporate that?
So it's there's a few different ways of it. Step two in my sales has always been make friends. So it's finding out what other people are passionate about. And I think when you get into the shadow aspects of Don Juan is that if you're misleading about what you're interested in just to win somebody over and you're not being authentic, then that's when you're getting into the pathology of the Don Juan. But for me, I'm looking for common ground. What things do we have in common? And it always, in the end, it's really will come down to we have the solution to a problem they're trying to solve. But I'll find out about, other jobs people have worked in, what other industries that they've been in, and try to create, because I've done business in a lot of other industries. So I'll look for parallels. Another question that I love to ask, and I think people don't ask it enough, is how'd you hear about me? Because, I learned that very young is working in car dealerships in Sacramento. I used to work for a company called Swift Dodge, and they haven't been in business since the early 90s, but there were people there that they would come in, you'd ask them, how'd you hear about us? I go, well, we bought our last 10 cars here, man. Like, we only come here and this is Swift. We're part of the Swift family. It's like, if you hadn't asked them that in the beginning, then you've got a lot of work to do that's already done just kind of by asking that question. And I think that's a Don Juan question. Like, how did you hear about me? Or why
You have a different starting point than
Exactly.
if they go, I was walking by and I just wanted to browse.
Yeah. Right. Or they might say, my wife told me to buy a new car today, or I couldn't come home. So, it's the same thing, and so it's it's a great way. It's kind of an icebreaker, and then it's not it's not manipulative at all. It's like, how did you hear about us? Is a great, we read the paper, and then also companies want to know. I want to know in our business, because 90% of our business comes from referrals, and so for me, I always ask that question, because if I get a referral, I'll call that person right away and I'll say, hey, Tom, Mike just called. He's asked me for a thing. I set an appointment for 9, and I'll always follow up and let that person. So I want to know who to thank if it's a referral. And most of the time with us, and it's a referral.
There's also, how does the like seven habits of highly effective people, Stephen Covey's book, relate to this?
So that's one of my favorite all-time books. I mean, I can recite the 7 habits backwards and forwards. It's on my website. But for Stephen Covey, his mission, I mean, they're not exactly one for one, but habit 2 is begin with the end in mind. And it's looking at your life. His exercise is funny. It seems kind of morbid, but it's a great exercise. But at the end of your life, what do you want that conversation at your memorial to be like? And so mission and vision is really about deciding on your true dreams and goals and going after it. And one of the things I remember from his book about mission and vision is that you don't want to climb the ladder of success in life and find out at the end that it was leaning up against the wrong wall.
There is a manipulation, like you said, with the Don Juan, there's kind of that paradox, right? Manipulation, influence, using for good or evil. And I think you also like to kind of talk about Ben Franklin as far as this goes too.
Well, yeah, I read, so I love Ben Franklin. I'm a huge Ben Franklin fan. I almost named my daughter Ben Franklin because the sonogram said she was going to be a boy. And I love that name so much. And I thought Ben Franklin Hiddleson was going to be a good name, but he has there was something that I've done this. I mean, I've used this concept to build my network is he had a saying, I don't know exactly how it goes. I'm paraphrasing, I'm probably butchering it, but asking somebody a favor is one of the best ways to earn their trust and confidence is if you ask somebody for a favor. And I read this article on Medium, and it was like 3 things that are manipulative. And this was one of the things. And the nice thing about Medium is kind of amateur writers. It's not, you can just submit anything. So anything you disagree with, you can just say, oh, they're amateurs, you know, but if you agree with them, you can go, well, I read this article on Medium, so it must be true. But I was thinking about it, and you know, it's only manipulative if you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And you know, in my business, one of the things that I love to look for the people who are gifted in an industry, and if I know there's somebody who's way better at something, or can give me an answer, or even if I'm just searching for answers and I have no clue, you know, they're all thinking, well, who's the 3 or 4 people who might be able to do me a favor in this case? And I'll just call them out of the blue. And it's a great way. People are, they're flattered, and it's a great way to get in contact. One time, I had a forklift was broken down. We were trying to load this truck. We had limited number of times, like 3:30 in the afternoon. And I called this client who was around the corner. I said, man, we got this order we're trying to load in this truck. We got to get out here. It's 3:30 in the afternoon. Would you be willing to let me, you know, drive your forklift down the street and load this truck? And he's like, well, where are you? And so I told him where I was, and I was kind of in the vicinity, but these big warehouses, they go, you know, acres and acres. And he goes, man, he goes, I would do it. He goes, but I'd have to drive my forklift on like a main busy street. He goes, so I'm not going to be able to do that. He goes, but have you tried pouring some water? Because what it sounds like is, it sounds like the engine, you know, when it gets close to blowing up, the carb will heat up and the LPG won't go through. So if you dump a little cold water on it, you might be able to get that forklift enough to run, which worked. And he said, oh, hey, and by the way, I forgot to tell you, we got bought out and we're moving into a new facility in West Sacramento, and we need racking, shelving, engineering permit, everything else. So I was really glad I asked that guy for a favor. I was in a bind, and you know, the rest is kind of history. And there's tons of, and the other thing is, I'm really flattered. People call me for some of the most off the wall stuff. I'm thinking, why are you even asking me about this? But I'm flattered, and I usually try to come up with something. It's like, well, if they thought I might knew, or at least maybe I'll know somebody. But it is charming. People, it does work, you know, when you ask somebody a favor. And, you know, if you're always just doing that and you're always manipulating people, I mean, I think that's going to come out, you know, and I think,
yeah, I mean, the point is, like, comes from a genuine place, and that's kind of the foundation of it. You, Mark, talk about, you caught them, you clean them.
yeah.
What happened there?
So here's another thing with the Don Juan archetype. And I've spent enough time to know with you, you have a lot of sales training. We kind of know the right things to say, how to overcome objections. And you can really, you know, one of my things in business is that I really want to be doing business with people I love doing business with. And there's red flags. And then you can overcome those red flags with salesmanship and talking to people. And pretty soon you've got this client that it didn't line up in the first place. And the most recent one I had was it was a little bit of a nightmare. But it started out as a referral from a great client. And this customer kept asking me to do things, asking me. There was a few, you know, one of the things, and I never asked this question, but I try to find out, are they working with anybody else? And I never asked that question up front, because if they aren't, they'll think, well, maybe I should be working with somebody. So I don't want to suggest it. And I said, you know, I asked one, this was the first red flag. I said, well, who else, you know, you're getting 3 proposals. Who are the other 2 proposals? And it was really kind of cagey. He goes, well, I don't want to give you that information. And I already spent probably, you know, 5 or 6 hours helping them with their design, what forklifts to buy, what elevations, what racking. So I felt like I'd earned the right to ask that question. And I'm not saying I'm right, but I just want to deal with people who kind of get that value. You know, if I've invested 5 or 6 hours in this project, and so he didn't tell me. But what's funny is I asked him a few more questions with 2, and I go, oh, okay, you're either dealing with Crown or Raymond. He goes, yeah, it's Crown. Because I kind of know my competition is part of my process is to say, you know, and if it's somebody, if they're in a different geography and it's somebody I think can do a better job and they're already working with them and they've done drawings, and I'll just say, hey, look, they've already done the work. They've earned your business. You know, if you want me to help you, coach you along the way, I'll do it, but you're already in good hands. And I mean, I rarely say that, but I will. I mean, if I know they're working with somebody who's already done all the work, I don't want to be the guy that comes in at the last minute, with a lower price or something and steals a deal. So these red flags kept adding up, and then I'm thinking, man, I got to call my buddy Tom and say, I'm not quoting this project. It was a nice project, but this guy is putting me through, all of this, just making me jump through a lot of hoops that we really shouldn't have to jump through. That if we're going to work on this project, and I don't. And I didn't do that. And then I just ended up wasting probably another 20, 30 hours of my time. And it just wasn't productive. It was something that was probably, I'm actually glad that I didn't push too far and actually get the order, because then that would have been even worse. But I did invest quite a bit of time playing this Don Juan, I can win them over, I can make this happen thing. And where it just, the criteria string wasn't lining up for how we really want to do business.
Yeah. Sometimes I guess you just have to go with your gut sometimes. You also talk about how kind of life is simple. So you decide what you want and you have to ask for it.
Yeah, I heard that. And it's funny how much the things of what I wanted out of life changed between the time I was like 25 and really 28, but say 30, 25 and 30. And what I realized by looking at the people, people around me, and even some people who had passed away unexpectedly, but no matter how much money or cars or houses or boats or power you have to ask yourself, are you living up to your values? And you don't have to take very long to look around, and that people are suffering all around. People suffer from all kinds of things. Is this deal going to go through? Is she going to stay with me? Am I good enough? And moments of suffering turns into years of suffering. And I think, limiting, kind of looking around me, and, maybe it's a lost relationship, but some people get burned by a partner, and really everybody's entitled to that, their fair share of suffering. And people could get really stuck. So, I really wanted to focus on things, and it took me, it's funny, I probably knew this when I was 18, but until I was 30 to realize that in my life, that really what was most important to me was my faith, my health, my family, and then all the economic stuff came after that. And it was funny because I had some, it was like, well, why should your health come before your family? And it's because if you're not healthy, you're not going to be able to serve your family. And it was kind of a tough distinction. So, my faith was really centered around, my making the world a better place for the people around me, or the things that I'm doing, whether it's my business. I've volunteered a ton of time in coaching, but in my, I needed to have enough economic success to do those things. So, I wanted to have enough money to have, to take care of my family, to have a nice house. I wanted to travel. And, what I found pretty quickly is that you get up to a certain point, if you just keep going for more stuff, that's an endless pit. And you're always going to want a nicer car. You're always going to want a bigger house. And it was funny. I took one of my classes, they were in, it was called Cancer and Politics, which is kind of off the subject, but the teacher said, with wealth, she goes, there's somewhere you have to draw the line. Where do you draw the line? Where she drew the line was having a private helicopter was enough. And I was thinking, okay, if that's what we're going to put, but I do think it's an important, I saw I was only able to watch like 5 or 6 minutes of it, but it was a Lewis Howes interview on money. It was a guy talking about money and success. He said the first thing you have to decide with economics or money is how much do you need, and then what do you need, and go from there. Because if you just say, oh, I want more, it's an endless trap. And so for me, in order to fulfill that Stephen Covey principle and have my ladder up against the right wall, I had to do that. I mean, there's my favorite story that I love to tell about this is I read the book Think and Grow Rich when I was about 18 years old. And I thought that it said in there, this isn't just for creating money. There is a spot in there. It's a really small part. It's like, this is not just about creating wealth. This is about creating a life you love. You could do the things you want to do. And what it reminded me back then is that the wealthiest man I ever knew was a clerk at Lumberjack. And it's a funny story because he had enough food in his refrigerator to always feed anyone who came in the door, including ice cream for dessert. And he was always proud, always had ice cream. And in his younger days, he owned a company and he sponsored basketball, baseball, football teams, built churches in his spare time. He always threw lavish holiday parties. And he always used to say, I sleep well. And we always laughed our butts off. But the thing that impressed me most is that he had his shirts ironed by my cousins. And I wanted to get in on that game, man. I had to wait till I was like 12 or 13. And it's one of the fondest memories I have. But this guy was my grandfather. And he'd owned a business in his younger years, but he wanted to have, the time to spend with his family, and he just needed enough, he knew what he needed. And one time I was working and was still working at a car dealership, and I used to go to my grandparents for lunch. I always, my whole career, as long as they were alive, I always went to my grandparents at least once a month. At that time, it was like once a week for tuna sandwich or something. And my boss said, man, he goes, it must be really nice to come from a wealthy family. I was laughing. I'm like, we're not wealthy. My mom's a teacher. We're on a single income. This isn't wealth. My grandpa, my grandmother's works as a teller at a bank. My grandpa's works at Lumberjack, which Lumberjack is like Home Depot. Lumberjack was like the precursor. It was pay less cash ways. Well, they had a few stores. It was a lot like a Home Depot or a Lowe's. And I'm like, man, we're not wealthy. And my boss goes, no. He goes, if you can go to your grandparents every week and they can serve you lunch, that's wealth. And I was like, wow, mind blown. So I always really, think of my pops as, without a doubt, the wealthiest person. The wealthiest person that I've ever known. And so my visions is similar to that. My family, my spiritual development, health, and family are the three most important things to me. I want to have enough money to be financially independent, travel, wear nice clothes, have a nice car, live in a nice house. But I want to lead the way with irrational generosity to my community. And, but the thing is the faith, health, and family, it comes before the economics part. And I'll add one last thing, because what I've found, and I can never prove this is true. I feel like it's true 100% in my heart, but those extra things I've done in the community, the volunteering, we never say no. If somebody asks for a donation, we're always, we're trying to look for, we've raised money, we've helped fundraisers, I've coached over 33 seasons of amateur sports. It's added to my fight to the economics of it, because people have always respected that. If I tell somebody, hey, look, I have to leave early at 2:30 because I got to coach a basketball game at 3:30, they're like, oh, hey, wow, man, that's great. Or, and then the ones that don't, I did have somebody tell me, well, you know what, Mark, life is all about this. Gave me some speech, and I'm like, no, life is about me coaching my kids. Life is about me being on every single field trip. And then if it means we can't do business, I'm sorry, but these things come first. And I think it's helped me because, people have respected that, and they know I'm willing to work till midnight the next day if I have to get it done. So
I like how that person really reframed your thought of what wealth is at that point, because you were thinking it's one thing, and you were thinking he was thinking the same thing as you, but he was not.
Yeah. And that was huge.
I want to just kind of rapid fire, because I know you also think about an ecology of values. So I just kind of rapid fire through what that means and some of that.
Okay. So I created an ecology of values for myself and the people that I'm closest with. It's not on my website or anything. I'm thinking about putting it on the Dow of website, Dow of Pizza website. And it's just something I created for kind of a dashboard for me to say, am I living these values? And I even, I want to not just live these values, but I want to be these values. Where if somebody asked the question, they go, yeah, that was him. And so I created this list. And the first one is the opportunities we face are big, so we dream big. We'll never insult the human capacity with small thinking and playing it safe with our gifts. The word opportunities, you could substitute problems. I was in a meeting with someone and I said this, and I know better. I go, man, this is a problem. He said, no, it's a challenge. And I said, no, it's an opportunity. And so we face some great opportunities. I mean, our clients have great opportunities. And I think, I was at a time in my life, probably 5 years ago, where I thought I can just coast home from here. I have enough going on. I can just really pull back, not do as much, not start a podcast, and just coast home. But that wouldn't insult the human capacity. And how could I, at the end of my life look and go, there was still more suffering. There's always going to be suffering. And so, the opportunities are big. So I need to dream big and not play it safe. The second one is the local community is a big deal to us. We'll invest our lives to build a local community. And I kind of talked a little bit about that already. The other thing is we will be a place for people to connect and experience greatness. And I think lives flourish when they're inspired by something greater than self. And I think greatness is a funny word. It might make people cringe. And I don't want to, try to say like I'm great. But what I've found is when you allow other people to experience, everybody has greatness inside of them. And when you're a place, I want to be a place where I'm honoring when people show up in greatness and acknowledging it. Part of that is asking for favors, right? If somebody's great, you can be a place where that greatness comes through. And the other thing is we'll find our significance through relationships. We all serve our communities well through meaningful connections. For me, really, that's what this whole podcast project for me of doing is all about, is connecting the community. We were already connecting, but this is, this is another place for us to connect. And I'm including, everybody I can think of that I want to be a part of this project, even suppliers, competitors, and we even had a conversation off the screen is this going to be a good idea to have competitors on my podcast? And I think it's one of those rubber meets the road thing. If that's on my values and that's on my list, I'm going to trust that. And that, there's an abundance, there's enough to go around for everybody. The partners we're working with, I'm going to shout their stories from my podcast because they've helped me. They've been a huge part. And relationships, there's projects, this project is happening, because of our relationship, really. If you think about it, the possibility, here's a worldview, the possibility of me having a podcast didn't exist. And it wouldn't exist unless you and I already had a relationship. We had some success stories already. We've spent time together. You've spent time with my clients, at an executive dinner in Chicago. And so we've built a relationship, and then that's where we can find significance. The next one, I love this is where the clown comes back in too, but we love our planet and we'll take responsibility for it. Actions speak louder than words, and driving a Prius doesn't count. Hashtag our planet. So I had to put, you don't drive a Prius, do you, Jeremy? No. This is my,
if I did, I still wouldn't be offended. That's fine.
well, it's always, it seems to me like I ride my bicycle a lot, and it's one of my most audacious goals that I had 17 years ago is when I started my company is I want to be able to I was driving about 40 to 50,000 miles a year. And I wanted to cut that at least in half. And one of my goals was I want to be able to walk to work or ride my bike to work. And I had read a study that if people rode their bike or walked on every trip less than 3 miles, it would cut their ecological, I forget what it was. It was enough to power a city for a month. There's this huge impact if you just take those smaller steps. And I think I could have put Tesla in there, but I said good things about Elon Musk on another podcast. But I think the thing about the Prius is that driving a car, you're still driving a car. One of my favorite cartoons that shows a Prius plugged in to a coal plant. It's a cartoon. It's like you're still driving a car. So really changing the perspectives, making the kind of changes that if we really want to make a big impact on the environment, is going to be looking at ways of doing things other than driving, like telecommuting or riding your bike or anything like that. And so I don't know why this is number 6 or 7, but our rule number 1 is enjoy the journey. We laugh hard, we laugh loud, and we laughed often. And so that kind of speaks to the clown archetype as well. And, there's times when I get so serious and it's one of those things, it's an aha moment. It's like, wait a minute, it's not that serious. Let's take a step back. Let's ask Jeremy for some coaching, 2-minute video, and get the perspective back on track, because the journey, there's a lot of ways of saying this, Cervantes, the author of Don Quixote, which Don Quixote is one of my all-time favorite books, is that the journey is better than the end. So, I mean, I think, if you look at what the end of a life really is, that's just obviously true, right? And then these last few, do you want me to go through the last 3, Jeremy, or have you had enough?
Keep it rolling.
Keep it rolling. We'll always bring our best. I love this quote by Aristotle: we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. I spent, probably from the time I was 19 to 29, thinking at some point I was going to arrive. And that is a fallacy. We are what we repeatedly do. And I love the concepts of habit. There's a book called The Power of Habit. I never got all the way through it because I think it's Charles
Duhigg. Yep.
Yeah,
exactly
Charles
right.
Duhigg. In the beginning, it talks about this guy has part of his brain cut out, and he's using that as an example for habits. And I was like, wow, man, I've learned a lot about habits without having to do frontal lobotomy. So, but I think, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is one of my favorite books. And I think that there's another saying that I've had for 20 plus years is that practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. So if you're practicing the wrong thing over and over and over, pretty soon you're going to be doing the wrong thing over and over. So, excellence is kind of, it's the same way. You have to practice.
I don't know if John Wooden said practice doesn't make perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect, or something of that sort.
Yeah. And he would be,
I don't know if he said it, but someone, I've heard it somewhere.
And I could see, what I love about John Wooden, and I have a quote here for him about, really success is the peace of mind, self-satisfaction that comes from knowing you did your best. And I saw a video with him where he said, we had some games where we won on the scoreboard, but I feel like we lost. And we had some games. I mean, this is another emotional one. I don't get so emotional about these coaching things, but it's true. We have the games we didn't win on the scoreboard, but we walked away winners, because we knew. And I've had some of those experiences, and it's so true that, success and everything, it's not so much about winning. It's about the journey. It's about the process. It's about, did you leave it all out there, on the court or on the field? The last couplers were lifelong learners, always reading. I got about 5 years ago, 6 years, I quit reading books. I was always reading like 2 books a month, 3 books a month. My wife goes, "You're always reading 3 books. Why don't you just pick one?" But I'll have one for certain, or I rarely read nonfiction, but there were some novels I wanted to read. I've read Catcher in the Rye and Kurt Vonnegut's novels because they have a message. And but I quit reading because it was taking me forever, and I I couldn't figure it out. But I couldn't see. I was reading. I'm like, I used to read a book in 4 hours, and now I'm sitting here for 20 minutes. I've only read 3 pages. So I quit reading for a while. It's actually a good thing. Kind of the same time I started listening to podcasts instead. But I was actually we were eating. Man, where were we? At a restaurant in Wailea in Hawaii, and I was with my best friend, and we're reading the menu. I've got the menu out like this, and I'm trying to read it. And he goes, "Here." He goes, "Put these on." I go, "No." I go, "You look like a knucklehead with those on," because the reading glasses are real little. He goes, "You look like a knucklehead because you're going like this." So I said, "Okay." And it was one of those things I kind of had a change of perspective, change my mind. I put them on. And I was like, wow, I can see this thing. And even, it's the lighting in a restaurant. Sometimes the lighting's bad. And so started, now I had bought readers, and then I kept losing them. And my wife goes, "No, it's not that kind of thing." She goes, "You just keep buying them. Every time you go somewhere, if they have readers on sale, you just buy them and you put them somewhere and you have them." And that was like opening up the world to me, because then I started reading books again. So the last one is we choose to look for the bigger picture, taking action locally and globally. And I think I've said enough about that. And there's something I'm working on too, and I haven't figured out what, but there's going to be a big give for us. Like, I'm really looking for that next. I've always been involved in like a nonprofit or something, and I don't want to throw any fundraisers or anything like that, but I do want to make a significant. I want to find something in either having to do with. We're involved in the Wounded Warrior Project. There's something we do called Cycle for Sight that we sponsor every year with our company, and it's also Wounded Warriors. So it's helping them back to the glasses and Wounded Warrior. But we want to make, I have to figure it out. But I want to make a serious, and I mean serious, like 7-figure contribution to a cause, one of those causes, and I'm narrowing it down, but it's going to be something big. The Homeboy, you did a podcast on the Homeboy. It was called the Homeboy Network.
It's like it was Homeboy, maybe Homeboy Industries.
Yeah, I listened to that podcast of yours because my nickname is Homeboy, because my kids, I had them on speakerphone in the car one time, and I was talking to one of my installers, and he said, "Hey, Homeboy," and my kids started laughing. He called me. He was, "Look, Homeboy," he was going to give me this information, and so they called me Homeboy after that. So I love that, but that is helping people transition from prison into society, right?
It's Homeboy Industries, and it's one of the largest gang rehabilitation reentry programs in the world. But yeah, some of them, like, have come out of prison, and they give them jobs and leadership, and treat them like normal human beings, like they should. And instead of them not coming out, and people look at their past record and they're not able to get jobs, and it's hard, right? And taking them out of their previous environment so they don't fall back into their old habits and old ways, essentially.
Yeah, so I want to get involved in something like that. And like I said, we're right now, we're sending $1,000 here, to sponsor a table or whatever. But I really want to get serious in those, because I think those are the opportunities. And I heard it at church, they were doing something like that, and somebody said, "Well, shouldn't the government be doing that?" I was like, "Are you kidding? Like, this is private industry. This is faith-based work. Like, this is what we're here for." I mean, and I'm sure the government is doing stuff, but I think there's enough talent out there. I mean, the Homeboy one, I think, is a great example. I mean, that's somebody, it was running a multi-million-dollar corporation.
Yeah. Tom Vaso was president of a billion-dollar company. And then he was on the board and just helping out at Homeboy Industries. And they brought him on and convinced him to be CEO, and taking that and treating it like a business and not just like a nonprofit, so that it's sustainable and he can help even more people.
Yeah, so that's the type of project. I mean, that Warm, I listened to that. I mean, I recommend anybody listen to that. It's just a great way. And that's what I mean by making a contribution locally and globally is projects like that and taking big action.
Mark, this has been awesome. And I want to just encourage people to check out more episodes of the podcast, and future episodes of the podcast, and check out your website as well. And I'm looking forward to the next one. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. This was awesome.
Thanks for listening to the Tao of Pizza podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.